All right, good morning or morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Morning is long gone, at least here anyway. So if you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen like a mobile device. If you're on a larger screen like a desktop, laptop, computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. Sorry, just checking something real quick. So let me scroll down, see who we will be starting with. Already got quite a few in there. Awesome. So we started here with Steve A. So if you happen to post your question, Bruce L., if you're still on here and you posted your question, you posted your question at 1:53. I don't know if that was last night or this afternoon, but it's outside the hour. So you're just outside the hour. So if you happen to be here, just go ahead and copy and paste your question in there, and we'll answer it later on in the office hours. Sure. What's going on with this? Hopefully you guys are seeing me. It's like super slow for some reason. No, it's working. Well, I'm just going to assume that it's working, and we'll keep going here. So like I said, I'll start here with Steve A. So Steve A says, how do the hips and shoulders turn on the downswing, and what are the angles halfway down at impact and at straight line release? So now don't take this as precisely this is where you have to be, right? But these are just general, what we're going to see, probably more like averages, right? So at address, right, everything's going to be squared up, hips and shoulders. As we go up to the top, your amateur golfer is typically going to have about a 90-degree turn or so. The tour average is going to be around 120 degrees with the shoulders, right? So that would be kind of like the tour average would be something that looks like that. Then the hips would be somewhere around 45 degrees, 50 degrees, 55 degrees, somewhere in there. Now, as we start down in the downswing, when the hips get back to parallel, typically that lead arm or when the hips get back to square, that lead arm is going to be at parallel. When we look at the better ball strikers, right? So here we are at the top, 90. Let's just say 90-degree shoulder turn, 45-degree hip turn, right? Because I think that's where most amateurs are probably going to be. And then by lead arm parallel, I want my hips to be close to back to square. And then my shoulders are going to be somewhere around 45 degrees back, right? So basically, my hips have turned and my shoulders haven't caught up any, right? Because as I go up to the top, I'm going to have about a 45-degree difference, right? And as I start my downswing and transition, I want to retain that 45-degree difference, right? I'm creating momentum with my lower body. So when I go up to the top, I got that 90, 45. I go back to lead arm parallel. I want to have about 45-degree shoulder turn there. And then my hips are going to be about square. And then when I come to impact, I want my hips to be around 45 degrees open. And then my shoulders are typically going to be, slightly open. When you look at the better ball strikers, they're going to be around 45, 40, 50 degrees open with the hips at impact. And they're going to be around 10 degrees open with the shoulders. But some players are square. Some players are more open than that. It just depends on, what's happening with the club. Generally, the more open your shoulders are, the more steep the club is, and the more closed your shoulders are, the more shallow the club is. Generally, not always, but generally. So if you have someone who shallows out the club a lot, right, they may be able to get the shoulders to be more open, right? So if I'm like this, I got the club really shallowed out, I can open up my shoulders more when I come into contact. But if I'm someone who's steep, I may have to come in with kind of closed or very square shoulders at impact to be able to hit a functional shot. So, but that's generally what it is. 90, 45 at the top, when the hips get back to square, that lead arm is parallel to the ground. That's typically when that happens. The shoulders are around 45 degrees at that. And at impact, hips are about 45 degrees open. Shoulders are slightly open, somewhere around 10 degrees. And then the straight line release, that's where everything kind of lines up, right? Everything, my chest, my shoulders, my hips, everything's, pointing out in front, 45 degrees or so, depending on where you're releasing it. So that's kind of the idea of where everything's kind of syncing up. And these are all things that we talk about in the Toss Golf system. So Adam E says, good afternoon, Q. Can you demonstrate where the handle of the driver be when addressing the tee? Should it be ahead of the ball? If so, would that encourage a slice? Hope you are doing well. It's really personal preference. This is one of those things where it's not what I would call a universal truth. So the Toss Golf system, that's universal truth. When you look at every PGA Tour player, every LPGA Tour player, basically anybody who's really good at golf is going to be doing the Toss Golf system, right? So those are what we call universal truths. Every single player has good spine angles and has good shoulder turn and has good lag. And every tour player, all of them have it. So, but you're going to look on tour and you're going to see some players that have the handle more in front. You're going to see at address. You're going to see some players that have the handle kind of just in line with the ball. You're going to see some players that have the shaft almost pointing backwards. So you have to find what works best for you. The thing is that the further you are away from impact, the more different you can be. And the more differences you're going to see in tour players, the further you are away from impact. So address is the furthest thing from impact, right? As far as the swing is concerned, it's the furthest thing away. So you can see a lot of different things because the golf ball does not care how you address it. It does not care. It only cares about how you are presenting the club to it at impact. That's it. That's all it cares about, how that club is hitting it, right? So you can set up with the handle way in front and then come into contact in a different position, and you can come in with the handle back behind. There's a lot of tour players that kind of have the shaft straight up and down at address or even slightly angled away. Then they come into impact and they have a slight amount of shaft lean. So your address position, as far as where the hands are, it's really about personal preference. You have to find what works best for you. So the best way to kind of go about that is just to go to the range and go from both ends of the extreme, right? So I would hit some shots where my hands are as far forward as I possibly can get them, right? And I would hit some shots and see what the results are, and then I would just do a little bit less. So instead of as far forward as I can, I just ease off a little bit, hit some shots where I do that, then ease off of that, and hit a few shots and keep going until basically you have the hands way over here and then you hit some shots. I know that seems silly, but somewhere in between there, right, between those extremes, you're going to find where you hit the best shots, and that's your answer. That's where you should have your hands. There's not a one size fits all. I will tell you what I do is I'm not even thinking about it. I literally just let my hands hang down naturally where they want to be. I don't think about having my hands forward or back. I literally just I get my body in the position that I want that feels that has my right spine angle and has my proper stance and weight distribution, all that. I let my arms hang straight down, right, and I grab the club, and this is where my position is. I'm not pushing forward. I'm not pushing back. The reason why I like that is it's more relaxing, right? But some players hit the ball better if they have a little bit of tension in their arms at address by pushing the handle forward, and some have it's really a personal preference kind of thing. But personally, I like to be as kind of relaxed as possible at address. So I just let my arms hang straight down. If I'm pushing the handle forward or back, I have to put tension in there to make that happen. But you just have to find what works best for you, right? So it's one of those things that's not a universal truth. All right. So Adam E says, last question, Q. Here's a scenario. Ball is in fairway about 5 feet from the front of the green and 20 feet to the pin. Can you demonstrate a chip shot from a fairway and from a rough at same distance? It could literally be the same shot. You just kind of have a little bit different mindset. It really depends on what the lie is in the rough. So as far as from the fairway is concerned, I'm 5 feet off. It really depends on what the fairway is like. A shot that I like to hit is with my hybrid. I like to hit hybrids that kind of that stay low and almost get rolling on the green like a putt. I like to hit those kind of shots. It's something that I practice. It does take a little bit of practice, but I think once you practice a little bit and you get the hang of it, I think it's a much higher percentage shot than trying to hit the shot with like an 8-iron, right? Or a pitching wedge. I think I've made a lot of chips doing this, but it does take a little bit of practice to get a sense for the speed control. But once you get that, I think it's a very high percentage shot. You're going to be more than likely to get it, within an easy tap in range if you do that. So, but that would only take that shot if I could, if it was smooth enough. Like if it's kind of longish, it just depends on the course you're playing. If you're playing like a really nice course where they keep it tight, the fairways are really tight, that's perfect for that kind of shot. Open Championship, those fairways and stuff, that's where that shot, link style, that's where you got the runoff areas and things like that. That's a great shot for those kind of conditions. Now, if it's where it's a little rougher, maybe you've got a sprinkler head in your way, maybe you got, there's a bunch of weeds or there's a growth or something that would deter the ball, right? In that situation, I probably hit an 8-iron and try to carry it onto the green out of the fairway. Try to carry it onto the green, 5 or 6 feet and let it roll out the rest of the way. Depending on how fast or slow the greens are, if they're quick and firm, it might be a pitching wedge kind of shot. Because an 8-iron, it may run out too far. So there's a lot of things to take in, but basically that shot would look something like this. I don't have an 8-iron here. This is a wedge, but I'd have my feet close together, something about a club head width apart, right? I'd lean my body forward a little bit, right? I get my hands a little bit forward. And again, this is a relaxed position for me. I'm not pushing my hands forward because I have my body, because the ball position would be between my feet, probably more toward my back foot a little bit because my stance is open. All right, so more toward my back foot, and I'm leaning forward. That if I let my arms hang straight down, that naturally puts my hands in front, right? And then I'm just going to rock back and forth. I'm just trying to hit it as crisply as possible to get it onto the green and rolling toward the hole. And I do the same thing with if I was doing it with my hybrid. Basically, with my hybrid, I just choke up as much as I can on the hybrid, and I'd actually grip it more like I grip my putter, right? So it's more upright, and I'd actually line it up on the toe a little bit because the toe is down, right? And I would basically take like a putting stroke and kind of do the same thing. So, but again, that's a shot you would want to practice. Now, out of the rough, you wouldn't be able to hit the hybrid shot because it needs to be able to roll through nicely. But you could hit the same kind of pitching wedge or 8-iron shot if you had a lie where the ball was just sticking up, where the ball was just sitting up on top of the rough. You could hit that same shot if you wanted to. And I would recommend that you do if you have clean access to the back of the ball. There's not a bunch of grass growing up around it. Basically, the ball's sitting up on it like it's up on a tee. Then you do the same thing. The only adjustment that I would make is that you want to understand that there's a lot of air underneath that ball because it's sitting up on the rough like it's on a tee, right? So you almost want to imagine like the ball is sitting up on a tee and you're hitting it off the tee because you don't want to get into the ground, because if you do, you'll likely chunk it or you'll get the strike too high on the face and it won't, you won't get the distance, the correct distance out of it. Beyond that, if you don't have access, depending on how bad the lie is, now I'm going to take a wedge, and basically I'm going to be doing the same thing. The only difference is I'm just going to put the ball a little bit further back in my stance. That helps me come down a little bit more steeply. I may open the face a little bit so I can swing a little bit harder, right? And again, that allows me to come in more steeply. If it's a really deep rough and I don't really have good access to the ball, what I'm going to do that same thing. Open the face, hit a wedge with some loft on it. I'm going to get my body forward, and now I'm going to hinge my wrist a little bit and kind of chop down on the back of the ball and get it to pop out, right? So we wouldn't want to use an 8-iron because the amount of speed that you would have to hit this ball with to get through the rough. If you hit that with your 8-iron, it's going way over the green, right? It's not going 25 feet, 20 feet and then 5 feet off. You need to have loft so that way you can hit it harder and get through the rough a little bit. So that's basically the way that I would play those shots. But a lot of it depends on the lie. You got to assess the lie and the surroundings, the firmness of the greens, the fast. There's a lot of variables in there. It's not as cut as dry as oh, I hit this shot from the fairway, this shot from the rough. There's a lot of things to consider there. Samantha Speed says, cure for outside in swing after completing Moose lesson. I would go back and continue because you're not really doing so. People tell me that they've completed a section. Well, if you're not doing the thing that you took the section for, you haven't completed it, right? You may have done a couple of drills, but you haven't really done it, right? So you need to go back and actually do the drills and make it second nature and get to where you're actually doing it. And really what you have to do is you just got to go as slow as you have to go to be able to do it, right? Because what it comes down to is it's either a physical limitation that's keeping you from doing it, or it's a mental limitation. And when I say mental limitation, I'm not meaning a slight to anyone. I'm just saying that your brain doesn't have the motor pattern to be able to do that. So what that means is that you have to program it, right? You have to learn, you have to train your body how to do it. It would be like, if you're teaching a dog a trick, right? And you expect them to get it after, one time, right? You're teaching a dog to roll over, right? If you just tell them to roll over, they're not going to do it, right? You have to train them to do it. And you got to train it by going slow and then they can do it faster and faster and faster. So that's the same thing when you're training yourself is you have to go slow. You have to regress it to a point to where you're able to do it, right? And one thing that I like to do, if you have an outside in swing, I like to set up a swing station. So what that means is basically getting this club or setting up like a pool noodle or something like that to force you to swing the club underneath it. So one that I like to do is alignment stick. The reason why I like this is because it's super cheap. You don't have to buy anything expensive to set these things up. You can usually set up a lot of different stuff with pool noodles and alignment sticks. Both of them are like a couple dollars each. So this is an alignment stick. Most of you probably already have one or are familiar with it. But if you don't have one, this is one of the cheapest and best training aids of all time. You can get it at about any home improvement store like Lowe's, Menards, Home Depot. I think I got this at Home Depot. I got several of them. I probably got 20 of them. But basically, these are like $1 or $2, and you can find them at Home Depot. I'm trying to remember when I bought them last. I think I got them in the section of the store where they sell like the garage sale signs and things like that. So, if you go to a Home Depot person and you ask them, hey, where do you have the alignment sticks? They're probably not going to know what you're talking about unless they're a golfer themselves. But if you ask them like where the where the garage sale signs and stuff are, you'll probably be able to find them. What these are actually meant for, they're meant to go at the end of your driveway, I believe, and they have like a little reflector on them. So that way, if it's dark or something like that, you can see where your driveway starts. If you have like a ditch going through underneath your driveway, because I've actually seen them like out in the country where people put them by their mailbox and stuff. But anyway, that's what they're meant for. And then the pool noodle, you can get about anywhere now in the summertime. I always see them at Target and those home improvement stores. That I know there's one of them that doesn't sell pool stuff. I want to say it's Menards that doesn't sell pool stuff. But I think Home Depot and Lowe's both have pool stuff. They'll likely have pool noodles. Any of the big stores that you can think of, the big brand stores, they're likely going to have pool stuff. Actual pool supply stores are going to have pool noodles. So, but anyway, you take the alignment stick and a pool noodle. If you're not familiar with it, it's just a big foam cylinder, basically, is all it is. And I like it because you can smack it with your club. It's not going to damage your club, and you it's not going to do much to the pool noodle either. They're actually fairly durable for being foam. It's like high density foam basically. And you just take this and you stick it through it and you create a T with it. And then you stick this in the ground back behind you and then you swing underneath it, right? So you want to set this up down your toe line and force yourself to swing underneath that noodle, and you'll get, you're setting up a swing station that forces you to do that. And start out with shorter, slower swings and then build up to longer and faster swings, right? Do it without a ball at first if you can't do it with a ball, right? So you gotta start somewhere with it and then build it up from there. Get to where you're hitting little draws with a like kind of a chip shot, and then go up to kind of a 3/4 swing, and then go up to a full swing from there. But you just need to do more of the drills and actually do it. Look at yourself on video and make sure that you're doing it. You can't. This is what a lot of people do that I see, because I just work with a lot of students, and they tell me, "Hey, I've worked through the top speed golf system," but then you look at their swing, and they're maybe doing the power turn, but nothing else. Like, well, you didn't really do it, because if you did, then your swing would look as such, right? So you have to look at your swing on video. You have to have feedback for what you're doing. You just can't think, oh, I'm going to keep my spine angle this time, and just think about it, because you may feel like you're doing something, but that's not the reality of what's going on, right? It usually isn't. Most people are surprised when they see their swing on video. I'll get videos from students and they'll say, hey, I've been working through the system, or I've worked through the system. And they're like, wow, I haven't looked at my swing on video. I can't believe it looks so ugly or whatever. It's like, well, you didn't really do the system, right? Because when you're going through the system, you've got to go through the tests, and the tests require you to look on video to see what's going on. So feedback is one of the most important things to see if you're doing better. It's like taking a test but not getting a grade. You have no idea how you did on it, right? Imagine if your school teacher, you studied hard for this test and you tried to take the test, and then there was no grade. You just took the test, right? There was no grade. Well, how do you know how you did on it? You have no idea. You got to get feedback, right? Feedback is video. Feedback is setting up a swing station. Feedback is your ball flight. If you're still hitting big slices and pulls and things like that, odds are you're not doing the move, right? Because if you're doing the move, you would be hitting draws and things like that. So you got to use feedback. So that would be my best advice. The other option is to sign up for like swing reviews and have an instructor be your feedback and walk you through how to do feedback for yourself, and specifically what you're working on, things like that. That's what I do in my swing reviews. I always try to have students using feedback of some sort, whether it's video, whether it's setting up a swing station, or both, or making sure we're getting a certain ball flight, a certain divot, whatever it is, we have to be getting feedback. So I had somebody went on vacation and had to cancel swing reviews. Not sure. I may have a spot available at the moment. Let me double check. Doesn't seem to be working for some reason. So not sure what's going on there. It's not letting me use a certain part of the site, but yeah. If you want to do swing reviews with me, click the instruction tab, or not the instruction tab, click the get a review link, and then select the swing reviews, or select the instructor that you want to work with. Does somebody mind just like giving me a message, letting me know that they can hear and see me? Just because I tried to do something on the site and it wasn't working. I'm wondering if the site is down or something, because it's like loading. It's not really working. And we don't seem to have a lot of people in here. All right, well, I'll come back up to the top in a minute and see if anybody's answered, but I'll continue to answer another question. So Tom S says, Q, in the downswing, I tend to start with too quick of a weight shift to the lead foot. This causes me the whole downswing sequence to be rushed rather than occurring in a smooth acceleration. Feels like I'm too focused on hitting the ball hard. Any suggestions? Yes, get the pressure in your foot even earlier. If you're waiting for the downswing to get to your lead side, it's too late. Basically, you want to get pressure into your lead foot before you reach the top of the backswing, so that way you can start from the ground up and push it around. If you're up at the top, then you shift the weight, then you gotta rush, right? So get as you're going up the top, you want to be shifting your weight and then go there. So a good drill for that is to get in your address position, no ball at first, right? Get in your address position, go to lead arm parallel in the backswing, loading up into your trail side, then continue the backswing as you move to your lead side, right? So I'm continuing the backswing as I move to my lead side, and I'm going to swing through into the full finish, pushing into the ground as I'm starting my downswing, right? That's going to get everything started. So you want to be pushing force into the ground, gets the hips turning, gets the shoulders turning, that gets the arms moving. That's what you want to feel like. It's a gear system that's starting from the ground up. So once you do some swings with that, then I'll try to do it in a fluid swing without the pause. Then I'll go from there. So Eric K says he hears me. Good. No spots available. They must have. I wonder why it's not working. So anyway, someone must have grabbed it while we were at some point. So no worries. So if you're interested in working with me, like I said, just join the waiting list. So that way you can get notified whenever spots open up. All right. So Peter D says, I'm enjoying the courses so far, but I have a problem with my lower irons. I am getting smash factors of 1.45 to 1.55 with driver 3-wood and hybrids, and about half the time with my 6-7 irons, I get 1.3, 1.4. With my lower club, it doesn't get much past 1.05. What lesson or drill should I start with to fix this issue? Peter, I wish I knew exactly what was going on, but there's just so many things that are going on. So basically what's happening is when you're talking to those who aren't familiar with what smash factor is your ratio of your ball speed to your club head speed, right? So your club head speed is essentially your potential energy, and then the ball speed is the actual energy that you're putting into the golf ball. So there are lots of reasons why you wouldn't be putting as much energy into the ball with the lower clubs. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you add loft, naturally you're going to be putting less energy into the golf ball, right? So that's why your smash factor is going to be now 1.55. That's probably a misreading. You're probably not getting 1.55 unless you have an illegal driver. 1.51 you can get every now and then, but it's probably more like there's probably just a little bit of a misread there. But 1.3, 1.4 with irons is pretty normal. If you want to get an idea of what smash factors you should be getting, how much, and again, smash factor ratio of ball speed to club head speed. So just put that into numbers. If you're swinging 100 miles per hour and you hit your driver, you flushed your driver, you should get a ball speed of about 150 miles per hour. Because the most you can get with your driver is a smash factor is about 1.5. Now, it goes down as you go down through the bag, but that's typically the max you can get. So to get an idea of smash factor, what would be good, just Google TrackMan PGA averages, and they'll have a chart there for every club. Every club, 3-wood, driver, hybrid, irons, all the way through pitching wedge. They don't have the wedges on there because most wedge shots, it's all clubs that they can track. It's a full. They know it's going to be a full swing shot for the most part. So that's what it is. So you can kind of see what this average smash is. Now with a wedge, like a 60-degree wedge, it's pretty normal to get a 1.05 depending on what kind of shot you're hitting. It's fairly normal. But what it's coming down to is you're not transferring energy into the golf ball for some reason. So that could be lots of things. It could be you're chunking it, right? It could be you're chunking your shots. It could be that you are adding a lot of loft, right? So you're with the lower clubs, you're adding a lot of loft as you're coming in. You're flipping maybe. It could be you're hitting it off the toe, you're hitting it off the heel, right? It could be something like that. So it could be a glancing blow. You're cutting across it. You're swinging over the top with an open face or something like that, right? So there's lots of things that could be going on there. It's impossible for me to say without seeing your swing, but those would be the things that I would try to narrow it down, right? So some ways you can check that, see where the strikes are on the face. You can use foot powder spray and see where you're striking it on the face. Spray it on the club face, see where those strikes are. You could look at your swing on video and kind of see if you can tell if any of those things are happening. A lot of times you can see heel strikes and toe strikes in slow motion video. You can see chunk shots in slow motion video. You can see an over the top, open face kind of shot. So those would be the things I'd be looking at. And then I'd be trying to correct those issues. But yeah, there's lots of things that could be going on there. So Eric G says, hi Q, I'm struggling getting high hands at the top of the backswing. If I really try my best, I can get them up there above my head. But the first thing that happens in the downswing is that the hands drop down low behind me, and the right elbow will take a loop towards the rear down line view instead of going back toward the same way it came backswing, leading the hands. So you may be doing what you need to be doing. I mean, if you're going up to the top, you got to shallow the club. So the elbow should be kind of working that way. Now, you don't want to be working behind you. You don't want to be working like that because that's typically going to get the club really steep, right? But, if you get the club up high, the elbow is going to, and the arm should work behind you to get the club shallowing out. So it's hard to say if you're doing anything necessarily wrong. What I would recommend doing is look at what are your ball flight contact issues and then work on things specifically that correct those. That's really the fastest way to improve, as opposed to just picking out something that you see that you feel like may not be right and trying to correct that, because it may not be wrong. It may be right. Maybe exactly what you need to be doing. The only exception to that is the top speed golf system. And the only reason why that's an exception is because these are the things that all players do, right? Every single player. If you look at Jim Furyk's swing, right? Jim Furyk brings the club up like that, and then he gets the elbow back behind him like that and comes through contact. That obviously that works for him. If I was working with Jim Furyk, I wouldn't try to get him to change his elbow motion, right? Now, he's kind of an outlier, I would say. Most players aren't doing that, but you have to look at, what you're doing functional or not. Form and function are really what you're going for. So, like I said, it's hard to know for sure. If your elbow is going back behind you and you're coming down steep, I'd recommend something called the ball between the elbows drill. It's not a very original name. That's just basically what it is. You just take like a small ball, like a mini basketball, like a 6-inch diameter ball, and if you're using like a mini basketball or volleyball or something like that, take a little bit of the air out of it, so that way you can kind of squish it. And I'd put it between your elbows and take some swings where you get your hands nice and high, and then I'd try to squeeze that ball with your trail elbow in the downswing. Now, don't squeeze your elbows together, right? That's the opposite of what you'd want to do with your lead arm. Squeeze the ball into your lead arm with your trail arm. So that's going to be like that, right? And if you look there, that's going to get the club laying off nicely and shallowed out. So it's hard to say without seeing your swing for sure, but that's what I'd recommend. So Roger B says, FYI, Clay's latest figure 8 swing drill fixed my driver slice for the time being. The drill is also very conducive to your wide, narrow, wide lag drill. I feel like Matt Wolf now, except 100 yards shorter. Thanks. Yeah, so I believe that may be the new video. The website's not working for me for some reason, but basically, figure 8 is kind of, figure 8 motion is kind of like that, right? So if you think about it in the backswing, you're bringing the club up like that, and then it's under. So it's almost like a looping kind of thing. So it's a great way, I would only do this necessarily if you are clearly bringing the club inside and then over the top, because that's what the opposite of this is. If you're bringing the club outside and underneath, because the reason why it helps is because when you bring the club outside, it will then have momentum to be moving like this. If you bring the club to the inside, the momentum's going that way, right? So a lot of times people will just kind of continue with that momentum and come over the top. But not always. There's lots of players that bring the club inside and then bring it on the inside of the downswing. Calvin Peete, Raymond Floyd, Sam Snead, a lot of great legendary Hall of Fame players that brought the club inside. So I wouldn't look at bringing the club inside as can't do that, right? It goes back to what are the ball flight contact issues, right? So if you're hitting a slice, what's the root cause? Well, the root cause is an over the top. Well, what's the root cause of the over the top? Well, it could be that you just get up to the top of the swing and you swing over the top, or it could be the root cause is bringing the club way inside, then you have the momentum. But that doesn't mean that bringing the club, you could easily bring the club up like that and then bring it down steep too. So the key, Roger, is to make sure that you're swinging the club from the inside with a closed face, because that's really, when you get down to it, that's what the ball flight problem is, right? It's swinging over the top with an open face. There's your slice. It's the face being open to the path. So, what you want to be careful of is just adapting and bringing the club up and then coming down over the top. You want to make sure, this is just to help you to swing from the inside. It's not necessarily going to make you swing from the inside. It's to help you do it. So you got to make sure that you continue to work. You're thinking about getting the club to work from the inside with a closed face. All right, so let's keep going here. So Ronald F says, I'm over 60 and it has been taking a while to get loose before and then cut off. What do you recommend before tee off at first tee? I just recommend taking a bunch of practice swings. It's really what I'd recommend doing. Just swing around a club. Just take some swings. I don't have any magic formula that's going to get you loose faster. It really just comes down to just take as many swings as you can before you hit. Obviously, don't wear yourself out, but just take some swings, swing back and forth. Go try to do as full. Start out with kind of shorter swings, and then just kind of build up, just going back and forth. Getting all the muscles going, using everything, just getting that full range of motion. Let those heels come off the ground, back and forth. Kind of going like that. Just do that as much as you can. That's really the quickest way to get loose. There's nothing really magic that I know of that's going to get you loose faster. So Edwin M says, I'm compressing the ball a lot better, but sometimes I pick my head up early. Any drill to keep your head down? Basically, what I would always be imagining is that you're pinching the ball between the club and the ground, because you can think you're keeping your head down and then kind of come up like that and do the same thing. So what I would imagine, because picking your head up, I imagine is leading to thin shots, top shots maybe. So what I would always imagine is that you're coming down and you're pinching this club, right? Like you're pushing the club or pushing the ball down into the ground with the club. That's what I would try to feel like you're doing. Like you're just pinching it, like you're trapping it down underneath there. That's what I'd be like imagine. Like you're coming down with the club and you're kind of going like that, like you're covering it. That's what I would always feel like when you're hitting your shots. That I think is the best way to keep your head down, right? Because I can keep my head down and still do all kinds of stuff, right? It's not keeping my head down so much. It's actually like what's happening with the club when I pull up or whatever happens. It's really what's happening there. So I would just watch the club smash the ball and cover the ball. That's what I would recommend doing. Just always focus on what that club is doing to the ball. So Bruce L says, I've been fighting the shanks. The longer the club, the worse it gets. I just came from the range to discover I am rocking forward into the balls of my feet in the downswing. I concentrated on keeping weight on the heels, allowing for the natural lifting in the swing and shanking stop. Could you comment on heel to balls of feet, weight distribution. Thanks. It should be fairly balanced for the most part. Like at address, you're going to be balanced. As you go up to the top of the swing, you're going to be in the heels, right? And then as you start the downswing, you're going to be a little bit in the balls of your feet. Then you're going to move to your heels. But if you go up to the top of the swing, you're in your toes, and then you kind of stay in your toes, you're going to be more than likely kind of moving your hips and kind of standing up, moving your hips toward the ball. And that's going to take away space for the hands and the club to work through, which can lead to the shanks that you're talking about. So feeling like you're driving the hips back, right, with the trail heel, and then driving the hips back with the lead heel on the downswing can help you to create that space that's needed, to not be able to shank it. All right. So Kim P says, I have what is called an approach wedge, which has an incline angle higher than a pitching wedge or a sand wedge. When would I select that wedge versus the two other pitch shots? So approach wedge is typically going to be between, as far as loft goes, it's going to be between a pitching wedge and a sand wedge. Typically, a pitching wedge is somewhere like 48, 46 degrees, and a sand wedge is somewhere around 54, 56 degrees typically. And your approach wedge is going to be somewhere around 50, 52 degrees. So you would just use that club when, it's a pitching wedge would be too much club, right? And then a sand wedge wouldn't be enough, right? It's to fill that gap between those clubs. So let's say you hit your pitching wedge 125 yards and you hit your sand wedge 90 yards. Well, if you have a 110-yard shot, that might be a perfect shot for an approach wedge, right? Because it's right in between there, rather than trying to muscle up and hit a pitching or a sand wedge as hard as you can, or really choking down and hitting a little tiny pitching wedge. It still allows you to kind of take a full unmodified kind of swing. As far as other situations where you might use it would be if you had a long bunker shot, right? So if you were kind of out of the range of your, let's say the maximum distance you could hit a bunker blast shot with your sand wedge would be 30 yards. Right. Well, if you had a 35-yard bunker shot, you could basically take your approach wedge and hit it the exact same way. Right. You open the face, hit it the exact same way, and it'll go further because it has a little less loft on it. Right. So it may be able to bridge that gap. You could use it chipping around the greens when it may be a little bit easier to chip with than a sand wedge because it has a little less loft, a little easier to control and hit your landing spots. But it might be, you might have a chip shot that, it's too far for a pitching wedge, right? So you might use an approach wedge instead. So those are kind of but mainly it's going to be that full swing situation where you're in between clubs there. So Colby B says, today I was pulling my iron shots about 5 yards, couldn't find a correction that worked. Any ideas? So when you're pulling a shot, what's happening is that you're swinging out to in a little bit, and then your face is in the same direction as your path. So if you think about it this way, your path might be 3 degrees to the left, and then your face is also pointing 3 degrees to the left, assuming that you're right-handed. So what you need to do is swing more into out, right? More into out, and keep the face lined up with the path. So if you think about it this way, in baseball terms, you're swinging toward third base, and the club face is pointed toward third base, assuming you're right-handed. You need to swing more toward first base with the face pointed toward first base. So instead of this, you need to feel like you're doing this, right? So default is this. You need to feel this, and hopefully the reality is more just on plane, right, with a square face. So that's what I've been trying to do. And then if you actually push the ball out to the right, again, assuming you're right-handed, then I would just ease off it a little bit. Instead of feeling like you're swinging toward first base, maybe feel like you're swinging toward the first baseman or the second baseman, just easing off a little bit to get it straightened out. All right, so we got about 15 minutes left. We got any more questions? I'll be happy to answer them. If not, we'll wrap it up there for today. So I'll give you guys another minute or so to ask a question. If not, we'll wrap it up. We went long by quite a bit yesterday, so it wouldn't be a big deal if we wrapped it up early today. Barry B says best drill to the L to L. Excuse me. Best drill to the L in the thought swing, through swing. Best drill to get the L in the through swing. What do you mean the L? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Barry. Are you talking about going like this? You talking about getting in that position? I mean, the best drill would be the L to L drill. Wrist angle. Yeah, the L to L drill would be the best one. So I'd if the website was working for me, for some reason it's not. But search L to L on the website, and there's a drill on there for that, I believe. Let me actually. Let me search and see. Oh, I know we did a video on this. I just can't remember. Let's try this. Man, I know we did a video on this a while back. I mean, I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I don't know why you want to be in the L position. But so I don't ever drill that. That's the so Barry's talking about the half backswing, full follow through. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that's in the 20-minute distance fix. I don't know if that's in week 2, but. So David K says, how do you find the max top of your swing without going too far and lifting, moving body parts? I have a hard time finding that point. So basically, the top of the swing is where you can turn your shoulders the most, lift your arms the most without losing your spine angle, right? So if I turn my shoulders as much as I can and I lift my arms as much as I can without losing my spine angle, like that's the top of my swing, right? So that would be where I can get the maximum amount of power. Now, what I wouldn't want to do is that, right? So it's the point where you get a full shoulder turn and you don't lose your spine angle, basically, where you retain that spine angle. When I talk about my spine angle, I'm talking about my body, how it's oriented with the target. So you see I'm slightly angled away from the target here at address. And then when I go up to the top, I want to remain slightly angled away, right? So if I go like that, I'm not angled away anymore. Now my swing is longer, right? But I'm not angled away anymore. So it's basically where you're getting your full shoulder turn and you're not losing your spine angle. That's the top. Now that doesn't mean you have to swing to there. You may be more comfortable swinging shorter than that, but that's where you're going to get the most power from. That's where you're going to have the most club head speed. So that's where you have to find it. You know, just to go on a little bit about that, John Rahm doesn't take as full a swing as what most tour players do, right? So, he could hit the ball further if he swung longer, right? But he's talked about he's got some ankle thing, like he was born with like a club foot or something, and his ankle, he's got ankle issues, so he can't properly load, I guess, on his trail foot. He talked about that in some press conference. I think it was for the Open Championship, where he talked about how he grew up with a club foot. They like had to break every bone in his foot or something, and then put it back together or something crazy. I didn't really know how that worked, but basically that's what he described. And then he figured out that he had to take a shorter swing because his ankle just isn't stable enough. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is that, you know, if he was a recreational golfer, it probably would be fine for him to take a longer swing. But being a professional player where he's hitting thousands of golf balls, right? You know, he needs that stability. But if he was just a weekend golfer or something like that, he would probably swing longer. But being a tour player, meaning he has to have something that he can do thousands of times all the time. You know, he would go, because there are videos of him when he's younger with a longer swing and things like that. So he's definitely capable of doing it. It's just that he doesn't, because I'm guessing anyway. It's just my feeling on it is that he's just not. He doesn't feel stable with it. So that's what he does. But generally, to get the maximum amount of power, retaining your spine angles and getting as big a shoulder turn as you can is where you want to be. So Anthony says, hello, I'm just starting my second week of video lessons, and I haven't yet seen my distance improvement, but I've been a lot more accurate in my last two outings. With more practice, perhaps I'll more distance. I outdrive most of my playing partners, even those younger than me. Thanks for sharing, Anthony. Yeah, I mean, you know, most people are going to be gaining distance, but there's always outliers, right? There's always people that aren't going to gain a lot. There's going to be late bloomers, right? There's going to be all kinds of stuff, but just keep tracking it. And then, you know, if you get any more improvements, make sure you go to the distance tracker and put it in there so you can keep track of it and see where you're stacking up with everybody else. But yeah, I mean, it's somewhat normal, but I mean, it's not surprising, you know, but you know, there are going to be some people that, you know, we have distance clinics, right? So hopefully we're going to start doing them again here in the fall. But, you know, we always, you know, 10 people come, right? And there's always one or two people that don't do as well as everybody else. And you're going to have one or two people that do a lot better than everybody else. So our average is typically somewhere between 10 and 12 miles per hour, the average. So we're going to get, you know, we're going to get one or two guys that are going to be like 18, 19 mile per hour gain, right? And then we're going to get one or two guys that are like 5, 6 miles per hour gain. And then everybody else is going to be like 8 to 12 mile per hour gain. And it averages out to, you know, 10 to 12 in 2-day clinic. So, you know, that's pretty normal, right? And it could be that, you know, you're not comfortable with what's going on in not doing it on the course. That's fairly normal too. So the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. The more of the swinging hard you do, the more your body is going to adapt to it. It just may be taking a little bit more time with you. But I just keep sticking with it. It'll come. So maybe Barry B says, maybe I'm misunderstanding some of the videos I'm watching. For example, the half backswing full follow through. I was thinking I needed to replicate the wrist angle in the follow through like my backswing. No, that's why it's called half backswing full follow through, because you're taking a half backswing and then you're following all the way through, right? So you're not trying to replicate that same thing. You're trying to come all the way through. That's why it, you know, when we see a lot of people do that half backswing drill, they do half follow through, right? And that's where the issue lies. So that's why we call it the half backswing full follow through, because it you know, it's better to get all the way through the ball for speed. So Clark P says, on your downswing, does your right hand roll my wrists? Yeah, I mean, the right hand's going to be rolling. The lead hand's going to be rolling. The momentum of the club's going to get everything rolling. You know, it's not, it's not like the left hand does nothing and the right hand rolls the wrist and vice versa, right? It's both, right? Both hands are rolling the club over as you're coming through contact. The best way I can describe it is with the right hand. The motion of the right hand is like skipping a rock across the water, right? So I've got my wrist cocked back here, right? And then I'm coming in, I'm opening up, my elbow is leading the way, my wrist is bent back. This is just like what it would look like in a golf swing. And then I'm letting it go, right? I'm letting it go as I'm coming through. And then with the lead wrist, it's like throwing a Frisbee. Right? My back is turned, I have my wrist cocked back here, and then I'm opening up, and then I'm letting go, right? I'm letting it go out in front. But what most people do, or people who are releasing early, which is most people, right? I would say at least 3 and 4 golfers that I get in unlimited swing reviews are releasing the club early. It's probably even more than that. They're as if they're spiking a ball into the ground. So the right hand is just throwing a ball into the ground, and then the lead arm is just throwing the Frisbee into the ground. We need to get that happening, right? So it's opening up and throwing out toward the target instead of releasing everything at the ball. And that's really what we do in the top speed golf system, right? That's what we lead up to. We lead up to the straight line release course, but you got to be doing the other things first. All right, so we don't have any more questions. We'll go ahead and wrap up right there. So thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you all next time.